Most retirement advice you hear says the same thing. You need $1 million, maybe $2 million, or 25 times your annual spending. And if you don't hit that number, you're stuck working. The earlier you want to retire, the bigger that number grows. But what if I told you that's only half the story? If you're willing to do just one thing, embrace flexible spending instead of rigid withdrawal rules, you could retire years earlier with significantly less money and reduce your risk. Today, I'm going to walk through an example that shows how the numbers we're consistently told are technically correct, but deeply incomplete. I'm Josh Maley with Modern Capital, and let's break this down. Chapter 1, the one change that changes everything. The traditional retirement planning model assumes you need a fixed dollar amount every year adjusted for inflation, no matter what. That's the foundation of the famous 4%. But even the person who coined that rule doesn't quite agree with it anymore. And in so many cases, it means leaving the life's greatest experiences on the table during some of your best retirement years. Even without a rule to follow, people naturally tighten their belts when the economy turns south. And for context, the stock market has experienced a bear market about 30 times since 1928. They delay a major purchase, skip the expensive trip, or pause gifting to the grandkids. These aren't crisis moves, they're small, common sense adjustments that people make without calling it a strategy. Yet traditional planning ignores this reality entirely. The one thing you need to accept to retire early or retire with less money is this: variable spending instead of a fixed inflation adjusted withdrawal every single year. That's it. And it's not some exotic approach. It's literally how humans behave. What we've done is take a rigid planning tool and pretended that people follow it perfectly, even though they never have. But if you're still stuck on the 4% rule, the data shows us that with a little planning and flexibility, 5.2 to 5.7% is often sustainable. That's a massive difference when you calculate how much you need saved. Chapter 2, breaking down the traditional model. Imagine a couple planning to retire at age 60. They want $90,000 per year in today's dollars to maintain their lifestyle. Social Security will kick in at age 67, providing $60,000 annually for their household. Until then, their portfolio needs to cover everything. Under the traditional 4% rule, they'd need to fund $90,000 per year for the first 7 years entirely from their portfolio. Using the 4% rule, that requires a portfolio of roughly $2.25 million. But here's the problem. The 4% rule sizes your withdrawal to the maximum you'll ever need, not the average. It doesn't account for Social Security, creating an income floor later, or that pensions often don't have a cost of living increase. It doesn't account for taxes, fees, or changing spending patterns. It's a bare bones calculator, not a nuanced planning tool. Even though this couple's retirement gets significantly easier at age 67 when Social Security starts, the rule forces them to solve for the hardest part of their retirement forever. That's why the number feels so impossibly high. Chapter 3, a smarter approach using time segmentation. Now let's change one assumption. This couple is willing to behave like real people do with some spending flexibility. Everything else stays the same. When you do that, the portfolio naturally splits into two very distinct phases. This is where our 3-bucket strategy comes in. Bucket 1 is cash, short-term reserves. We set aside roughly 2 years of expenses, so about $180,000 in cash, money market, or short-term CDs. This isn't about growth. It's about having liquid, stable money we can draw from immediately without selling anything. The market drops 30% in year 1, we're not panicking. We're pulling from this bucket and sleeping at night. Bucket 2 is the protected income bucket. This is where we fund the rest of the bridge years and create predictable income going forward. This can be a combination of CDs, fixed annuities, fixed index annuities, but this bucket is designed to grow safely and protect the next 10 to 15 years of your income in a way that insulates you from a worst case scenario. Basically, we want it to grow with as little to no risk as possible of losing money. For this couple, we'd allocate roughly $400,000 to $450,000 in bucket 2. The income bucket doesn't just cover the bridge, it continues generating predictable income into phase 2, reducing what we need to pull from investments once Social Security starts flowing. Bucket 3 is growth. Everything that's left, roughly $970,000 to $1 million, stays fully invested in equities and doesn't get touched for 20 years. We've never seen a 20-year period in the S&P 500 that's lost money. That's the fact we can lean into. This bucket can drop 40% in year 1 and it doesn't matter because we're not touching it for 2 decades. It's got time to recover, compound, and build the wealth that funds the back half of this retirement and potentially leaves a significant legacy. The total bridge need is still $630,000, but instead of hoping a blended portfolio survives sequence of returns risk, we've separated the dollars by when we need them. The money we need soon is protected. The money we don't need for 20 years is invested for growth. Every dollar has a purpose, and no dollar is being asked to do a job it wasn't designed for. Chapter 4, what happens when Social Security kicks in? Here's where the picture changes dramatically. Once Social Security starts at 67, the portfolio isn't funding $90,000 a year anymore. It's only covering the $30,000 gap. That's an entirely different level of pressure on your investments. Most people hear 4% withdrawal rate and work backwards from their total spending number. If you need $90,000 a year, the 4% rule says you need $2.25 million. But that ignores the fact that Social Security is covering $60,000 of that. You only need your portfolio to generate $30,000, and that requires a fraction of what traditional math would suggest. Now, we're not just blindly applying a withdrawal rate and hoping it works. We're building this around how people actually behave. If the market has a bad year, most retirees naturally pull back a little. Maybe they skip one big trip or they delay a big home project. They don't spend the same exact amount every year regardless of what's happening. When you account for that flexibility, the portfolio you need for this phase drops significantly compared to what rigid planning would tell you. And here's the key. You don't need that full amount sitting there on day one of retirement. That money has 7 years to grow while bucket 2 handles your income during the bridge. So the amount you actually need to set aside for this phase is even less than the final number because compounding is working in your favor the entire time. This is why the bucket strategy is so powerful. The bridge bucket handles the heavy lifting up front. The growth bucket has time to mature, and by the time you need it, it's had years of compounding that the traditional approach completely ignores. Chapter 5, the total picture. When you add it all up, the cash reserve, the protected income bucket for the bridge years, and the growth bucket that matures into your long-term income source, the total portfolio this couple needs at 60 is roughly $1.6 million. That's what the $630,000 bridge plus the growth bucket is working behind it. Compare that to the $2.25 million the 4% rule said they needed, and that's about $650,000 less. And for the exact same lifestyle, same spending, same Social Security, same retirement age. The only difference is how the money is structured. That's the difference between planning on a spreadsheet and planning for a human being. The spreadsheet treats every dollar the same. The bucket strategy gives every dollar a job that matches when you actually need it. Chapter 6. What this means for your timeline. Now let's flip this around because this is the part that changes the conversation for a lot of people. If traditional planning says you need $2.25 million to retire at 60, you might be looking at your portfolio right now and thinking you're 5 or 10 years away. But if the real number, structured properly, is $1.6 million, that changes your timeline significantly. Think about someone with $2 million saved at age 55. Traditional advice and benchmark rules might tell them they need to keep working because they aren't at the magic number yet, especially if you want to retire before Social Security kicks in. But when you run it through the bucket approach, bridge the gap years with protected income, let the growth bucket compound untouched, and account for the fact that Social Security covers the majority of expenses starting at 67, that $2 million isn't just enough, it's more than enough. And it even includes a $400,000 margin of safety. Of course, this is a hypothetical scenario, but I've seen so many situations just like this over the past 25 years as a financial planner. If you want to explore how these strategies might apply to your situation, click the link below to meet with one of our financial planners. This video is for educational purposes only and should not be taken as financial, tax, legal, or personal advice. Always consult with qualified professionals before making decisions based on this information.